won't take anywhere near as long as that.
Very well, very good. Very
yeah,
good.
the network is great. The rail Metrobus, I'm still not convinced is actually going to be the great white hope that it's going to be intended to be.
Or brown hope.
Or brown hope, or any hope actually, to be perfectly honest. It is a real problem with getting people in and out of the city, and I don't think that we're looking at it in a particularly positive manner from looking at the future. This is a big city. It is a very, very prosperous and important city. Maybe we should be looking a little bit more ahead and looking at the possibility of underground, of elevated railways, and trying to get it so that people can easily move around the city in a vehicle of some sort, not necessarily a car or a bus, and just make it so much easier for people to get around, which is just impossible at the moment.
There's cloud cuckoo land.
That is cloud cuckoo land, Paul. And underground for Bristol. You're talking billions. Tell me where you get the money from. It's really easy to speak from outside. You try and do that. It's nonsense.
In the same instance, George, where's the money coming for the buses and the new train line you're going to put up?
It's probably it's a
20th. It'd be 5% of the cost of building an underground. An underground, you're talking about many billions. I'm talking about a total of 400 million.
That didn't answer my question, George.
We want to try and get as many questions as we can.
No, where's the money come from?
Yeah.
The money comes from, 3/4 of it comes from government and about 1/4 of it comes from the four authorities.
Right, thank you.
Just a very, very quick response to that.
Very quickly, because I'd like to hear from other candidates and also other questions.
It's an idea that we need to be looking at possibly for the future. It is, however, not a good idea to continuously be throwing what can well be hundreds of millions of pounds at projects that solve actually very little.
Right. Before we move on to another question, were there any other candidates wishing to respond to this question?
Well, as transport is still on the table, just a kind of just an appeal, just a bit of an appeal actually, and it comes to this question of listening to people and actually including them in the actions we take on the city. Now, I'm not, like anyone, I ride a bike. I don't take it as my primary identity in calling myself some people do this now. I just ride a bike. I walk a lot around the city. I want to see people out of their cars. I love that. I love the eye contact. And I think it brings streets alive. But when we're taking these measures, we have to recognise that sometimes we do things that have a disproportionate impact on the lowest paid and the most vulnerable people. Some of the people that have been impacted as well by measures to hit on commuters have been low-paid school staff. I know this because I'm being told by some of the staff. It's cleaning staff, it's dinner staff, who are losing significant portions of their pay because of the way it's been done. The failure to introduce blue badge provision in RPZ as well. So we've got to be careful that when we go into the soaring rhetoric, whether we learned it and it all sounds very poetic, that we're not inadvertently disadvantaging some of the most vulnerable people and lowest paid people in the city who depend on their cars for both socialisation and being able to actually access their employment. And unfortunately, if we don't listen, those are the kind of mistakes we make.
Excellent. Were any of the other candidates wishing to respond?
I'm happy to move on rather than talk about transport. But
let's move on. Well, just a very
quick one, which is to point out that when we originally started off with Metrobus, when it was still known as Bus Rapid Transit, one of the reasons why the Elaine administration, which was Labour, was Lib Dems and the Labour group, went forward with it was because we were told that 95% of the funding was going to be provided by central government. And it's very concerning to see that now 75% of the funding seems to be coming from the local authorities. And I think that's...
No, 25%.
25%, so it's still 5 times as much as it was when we started.
No, it's not.
But I think you just said it was 25%. It was 5% when it started.
It wasn't 5% when it started, so it's not 5 times the amount.
Any more?
Yeah, we'll
Let's move on, shall we?
Pete?
I'm going to take the opportunity of all the candidates being here to ask whether they would care to make an apology to the 27,000 students of this university for two things. Firstly, for the white elephant, to give it its correct title, of the 220 million that is causing the motorway to be closed, which means students come from their city centre hall of residence to the campus to study and are then left at a bus stop for a year because the southbound motorway has been closed to put through Metrobus every night for a year. So I'm going to ask whether any of the candidates would like to apologise for that in the first instance. And secondly, to pick up on the housing question, could the mayoral candidates comment upon the assumption in the West of England Housing Market Strategy document that 75% of the homes Professor Glenn Brownlee of Heriot-Watt University estimates Bristol needs will not be built because the city has assumed that ones that have been in the planning system for up to 5 years and not been built will suddenly magic into appearance. The Mayor's affordable housing strategy, as Nick Hooper pointed out, allows all of those planning agreements to be negotiated back to zero with no affordability contribution, with no Section 106, with no community infrastructure levy in order to move forward the supply. But 75% of the homes estimated as needed in the West of England Housing Market Strategy are assumed to be magicked out of nowhere. Would the candidates like to apologise and explain?
Because the mayor was directly questioned, I'll let you respond first, but then I am going to go to some of the candidates we haven't heard from.
Well, of course I apologise for any inconvenience, but you cannot change a system without breaking eggs, and the Metrobus will be transformational. I changed it because I thought that it was badly planned, and it's planned for the better, and it will have the best quality vehicles operating on it, and and the city. I was, but
don't talk over each other, please.
Okay. But it will improve. It's not perfect. I prefer a tramway system that would cost about 10 times as much. I prefer an underground system that costs about 25 times as much. It is the best that we've got, and it will give a much surer and faster system, and it will be of huge benefit from next year for the students of this university. Of course, I apologise for the inconvenience. In terms of housing, in terms of housing, this is a totally separate answer. You heard me, what I think about affordable housing. I think every development should have its at least 30% affordable housing on it. As an architect, I know how easy that some of the developers get out of this commitment by giving a calculation that proves they can't afford it. It's a false calculation that is based on the value of the land, or the price of the land. The price of the land should be zero, so that you can, and stop putting me off. The price of land should be counted as zero, so that developers can't get out of that. I'm absolutely with you about that. And of course, affordable housing does matter for students because it ricochets the whole way through the system, and we've got to find a way of producing more of it.
George, just to pick up, we would like to hear from some of the other candidates in response to your very, very valid questions, Pete. And there's a lot that want to talk, Pete, so we're going to hear from them. I'd like to start with Christine, because we haven't heard from you in a while, and you seem to have some things you want to say, yes?
Okay. I'm not responsible for the bus routes, but I suppose what I would say is what contingency plans have been made for the interim, and how was that, how were the people that are using those services, how were they consulted, because they would need to be at the heart of whatever solution it was that enabled the people to move around and get from this campus to wherever they need to go. That's the only way I can respond to that, I think. The 75% of the housing, this is a national issue. And, you know, it's the direct line to government, isn't it? And, you know, somebody on my right's got one, and there's 3 people from political parties on my left. We need to hear what the political parties' policies are on this, I would suggest, because it has to be done at a national level, because the architect is telling us that there's things on a national level that need to change. I'm not a housing expert, but this is what we need to hear, I would suggest. Who wants this?
I was going to leave it to Paul because I've seen you've been waiting to speak.
So I'd like to hear from Paul Saville as well, please.
And then we will hand down to Tony.
So on the Metro bus thing, I was one of the protesters that was up at Stapleton allotments, up in the trees, which was an ongoing battle with Bristol City Council. What George won't be telling you is before the election he was against the Metro bus, absolutely, he said that he would be against it. When he got elected, he changed. This is what I'm actually really sick. Hang on. This is what I'm really sick of: is politicians that say one thing, they get elected.
I need a right to reply. Yes.
Yeah, of course you have a right to reply. Of course. They say one thing, they get elected, and they do another. Now the Metro bus. Hello. The Metro bus. Sorry, the Stapleton allotment land up there is Bluefinger lands, the most fertile land, not just in this country but in the whole of Europe. And now it's been tarmacked over. As a keen and environmental activist, away from bus routes and things like that, actually that's some of the most fertile land. Once it's gone, and now it has gone, and now all we see is tarmac. Beautiful land, really, and the wildlife up there, absolutely fantastic. If you do get a chance to go up there, go and have a look and see what monstrosity this council, all councils are creating. That's when George talks about the children's future, that's the future. Concrete, tarmac, and greyness and blandness.
Right. We're going to allow the mayor a 1-minute reply, and we're also going to change the our time because we want to hear some other questions. We know there are other questions, and we're fast running out of time. So from now on, it's going to be a 1-minute speaker's time.
Okay. Just quickly on the blue finger, what I've done is really radical, and I've protected forever the 90% of the land that is the blue finger that has not been used for the Metrobus. I was legally unable to change the Metrobus, which I would have preferred to have altered its route. I was legally unable to do because of the previous agreements with the Department for Transport that I inherited. That is real life. I have to live with that. And so the combination of those two accusations is, one, I couldn't change it as much as I wanted to. I did change it. And the other, I've done something really radical, and I've changed, and I've put into covenant all the rest of the land so that it will be for growing and wildlife forever.
Now, there are 3 candidates at the end. Are you wishing to respond to this as well?
Oh, definitely. The question about the 85,000 homes, and you said about if 59,000 get negotiated down to 0. Well, even if we're able to deliver the affordable homes they promise, we still won't be able to deliver enough of the affordable homes that are needed into the future, because it will require the additional 25% to be delivered at a rate of some 60% being affordable. That's not going to happen under the legislation at the moment unless we do something very radical. And also, can I just quickly point out, it's not affordable housing isn't always affordable. A lot of affordable housing is at 80% of market rates. That's unaffordable for most people, and usually 90%